a minute or so here. As you can see, we're recording our community conversation today. We're delighted and excited to have a phenomenal photographer, QT Luong, join us to talk about his photography book on America's national monuments. We have a terrifically full house. And before I introduce our host and our guest, I just want to cover some logistics. We do have closed captions available for this conversation. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen where there's a menu of things, to the right of the record button, there should be a live transcript button, and it has a CC icon on it. If you click on that, you can both turn on the closed captions, and there's an option to modify the size of the type font, the size of the text that you'll see. So again, that's in the live transcript button at the bottom, just to the right of the record button. And we are also excited to announce that at the end of our conversation, one of you on the call today, we're going to do a random selection so that one of you receives a signed copy of Tuan's book. And he's excited. We're very thankful for his generosity to provide one of the books, and we're excited that one of you will have it. So for that, if you could please be sure that your Zoom name is the name that you RSVP'd for, so that we can match that on our random sample. So thanks everybody for being here. Let's get to the good stuff. I'm delighted to welcome the chair of the trustees of the Conservation Lands Foundation, Ed Norton. Ed?
Thanks, Chris, and welcome to all of you. I really love these community conservation conversations that we have. It's a real opportunity to connect us with those of us who are working to protect America's public lands. So I really enjoy them and look forward to them. And I've been particularly looking forward to this one. And let me give you a little background as to why. From the very beginning, actually, when the idea of the Conservation Lands Foundation was really just a twinkle in my eye, not really even a concept, let alone an organization, I had been searching and looking for ways that we in the conservation community could raise awareness of the Bureau of Land Management's National Conservation Lands, then called the National Landscape Conservation System, and raise awareness of these specific places and of this system, this collection of public lands that have been created under the jurisdiction, under the management of the Bureau of Land Management. They are truly, I thought, and I remember when we first began to talk about this, using the word, these are really America's hidden treasures. We created the Conservation Lands Foundation in 2007. We're now 15 years old. And from the beginning, one of our goals has been to raise awareness of these places. It's a very challenging goal. You have to remember that the national park system is more than 100 years old. Well, of course, we all know about the national parks. And we've always had in our mind's eye this goal of making people aware of the national conservation lands, just as they are aware and appreciative and supportive of the national park system or the National Wildlife Refuge System. And frankly, it's been a little bit of a frustration that we have not been able, in the press of other business, creating new national monuments, protecting existing national monuments from the threat of first the Bush administration and then the Trump administration. We've never really had a chance until recently to push this part of our mission forward. Just coincidentally, I was in a conversation with a member of our board of trustees, Dayton Duncan, who you all may know is one of the primary writers and producers of the Ken Burns series on national parks, the Civil War, Lewis and Clark, and many others. And Dayton mentioned to me that QT Luong, who's with us today, was doing this book on national monuments and that I should take a look at it. And he sent me the galleys. Well, I read this book in its galley form and saw the pictures, and I thought, at last, somebody has captured this. And so we're here today with QT Luong to talk about this. But I want to just say to you, we all have coffee table books that sit frequently unopened on our coffee tables with these, with all kinds of pictures of Africa and Asia and national parks. Well, this is definitely a coffee table book you should have, but you should have it not just to sit on your coffee table. You should have it to read and read carefully, because it has a wonderful introduction by Sally Jewell, the Secretary of the Interior, about the National Conservation Lands, and a truly brilliant preface by QT Luong himself as to how why these lands are important and why he did this book. This book captures, not only by marvelous photographs, these places, but it also does something that I think is really important. It tells the story of the people who have been responsible for creating these places. The essence of the Conservation Lands Foundation, the reason that we were created, was this firm belief that the places that you will see in this book, places are best protected if there is a group of local people who care about the place, love the place, will watch out for it, will be the watchdogs, the constant pressure, the constant presence, the people who will always be at the table, will push back against the fact that there's always somebody with a bad idea that wants to do something, that'll be the countervailing force. So places are best protected, even more important than their statutory designation or their legal designation, if there is a group of people. And these people are stitched together as part of a national network. And that is what the Conservation Lands Foundation does. We have created this Friends Grassroots network of local organizations that support these places, and that they are bound together as our Friends Grassroots network. And nobody has captured that. And nobody has captured the relationship between protecting these places and the local support better than QT Luong has in the book, Our National Monuments, America's Hidden Gems. Well, thanks to this book, they aren't hidden anymore. So I encourage you to, at the end of this, conversation, we'll give you an opportunity, if you aren't the lucky person to win it, is how you can buy this book directly from QT Luong. And I encourage you to do that. And I really encourage you to do this because one of my goals is not only to produce to distribute this book very, very widely because of what it says and what it shows and what it does and its message, but also to persuade my good friend QT Luong to do a volume 2. And this volume 2 will be about not only the places that are national monuments, but the places that should be national monuments, so that we will have a companion alongside this of the places that should be national monuments. And I've got a lot of places I want to take him. So without further ado, you'll hear from me at the end. I'm going to introduce the photographer of this great book. And I really believe it. I really believe this is a conservation book that ranks up with Time and the River Flowing and some of the other conservation books, that photographic books that we know about, not only because of their photography, but their message. And so without further ado, I introduce to you our guest photographer with a lot of appreciation, QT Luong. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for this generous introduction and for all that you do. This is an honor for me. Thank you, all of you, for watching this presentation. I was a more unlikely person than most of you to photograph America's public lands, so I will start with my story. I was born in Paris from Vietnamese parents and grew up as a city kid until my college friends took me up the high peaks of the Alps. I discovered for the first time the wilderness and made a connection with nature. My world totally changed after that. I took up photography then as a means to bring back the beauty of mountaintops to friends and family who could not get there. At first, my goal was just to document my climbs. But soon, I began to understand more about the light and the art of photography. In the summer of 1992, I undertook my last climb in the Alps. Beautiful light at sunset. But isn't it a bit late to be on the summit? This climb was different. It was intended as a photo trip. The winter after that trip, I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. At that time, I was an artificial intelligence computer scientist. I was looking for a short-term postdoc position in the US. I didn't know much about the geography of America. Other climbers had told me that Yosemite had some good rocks to climb. Of all the great research universities, I chose Berkeley because it was the closest to Yosemite. I didn't know anything about the national parks, but I heard there was a vertical cliff 3,000 feet high in Yosemite, the tallest in North America. So I went there and discovered a vertical wilderness at an impressive scale new to me. The climbs took several days, and for sleeping, we had those foldable platforms called portalages, very comfortable. Just make sure you don't roll during your sleep. I didn't fall out of the portalage. The mountains called again, and in the spring of 1993, I set my sights on Denali, highest mountain in North America at more than 20,000 feet. What makes the climb up Denali special is a combination of mountaineering and Arctic expedition. Temperatures can go down to minus 40 degrees. You build snow walls to protect your tent from strong winds. You start with supplies for 3 weeks. That's the time it takes to acclimatize, climb, and wait out storms. That's too heavy to carry, so in addition to a backpack, you pull a sled. I didn't freeze to death and made it to the summit. With glaciers extending to the horizon, the immensity of the pristine mountains were at a scale new to me. In the fall of 1993, I visited Death Valley. I had not seen a desert before, so it was an environment new to me. I was previously standing on the coldest mountain on Earth and on the top of North America, but here was a place with the hottest recorded temperatures on Earth and the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere. I was able to appreciate the contrast because I saw both. There are also similarities. If you look at those two images, you can see a vast valley with the salt flats echoing the glaciers. I realized how much diversity was found in the national parks. Each park represents a unique environment, yet collectively, they're all interrelated. Natural landscape photography is one of the most influential contributions of American artists. I began to immerse myself in those traditions. I visited local museums, and the prints were the most beautiful I've ever seen. Compared to my experience, my photos of Denali disappointed me, so it was time for a new approach. I decided to try the same camera as the American Masters, the large format camera. Here is one of the first pictures I took with my new camera in Death Valley. When I inspected the transparency on a light table, I was astonished to see more detail than I noticed when I was standing at the scene. Those two strands, my desire to see the diversity of the parks and large format photography, combined to inspire me to embark on the project to photograph each of the national parks with a large format camera. Instead of going back to France, I settled in the San Francisco Bay Area. I became the first to photograph all 57 national parks in large format in 2002. 20 years later, there are 63 national parks, and I'm still the first to photograph all of them in large format. I did about 400 parks visit, returning in all seasons. To celebrate the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service in 2016, I released Treasured Lands, which won 12 awards and became a bestseller. It was the result of more than a quarter century of work. After that publication, I was going to take it easy. However, my next project started in 2017 and led in less than 4 years to the publication of Our National Monuments, which is a book I will be discussing today. First, what are national monuments? Ask a person on the street and you will probably hear something like that. However, in the United States, the term has a more specific meaning. The first national monument, Devil's Tower in Wyoming, is a natural feature defined by a 1906 law called the Antiquities Act. National monuments are federally protected areas containing objects of historic or scientific interest. The main difference with national parks is administrative. The president can proclaim national monuments with only a signature, whereas only Congress can establish national parks. Congress had been debating over the Grand Canyon since 1882. By 1908, commercialism was running unchecked, but Congress had not yet acted. President Theodore Roosevelt did by proclaiming the Grand Canyon a national monument. Since 1906, 16 presidents have used the act to preserve some of America's most treasured public lands and waters. Half of today's national parks were first protected as national monuments. Some national monuments fit within an acre. Others protect entire landscapes with natural features as extraordinary as those found in national parks. An excellent example is Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument located in southern Utah. That Sunset Arch, the first of 6 sites within the monument, I'll show you. Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument is 50% larger than Grand Canyon National Park. And you can see how it dwarfs Bryce Canyon National Park and Capitol Reef National Park on that map. So that's a Paria toadstool. Many of the attractions in Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument are quite remote, but this one is very easy to access. Varvit hoodoos display a particular elegance thanks to their slender white spires. There's a 9-mile round trip off-trail hike, but it is easier than it sounds, as it takes place entirely along a flat and wide dry wash. The Paria Badlands. There are many areas of badlands in the southwest, but those are the most colorful I've seen. Paria Canyon is also a Vermilion Cliff National Monument, but starts in Grand Staircase Escalante. Dry Fork Coyote Gulch includes not 1, but 4 beautiful salt canyons. This is Peekaboo Canyons, where you find a number of arches, large and small. Willis Creeks, at the other end of the monument, a year-round stream and curving walls distinguish its narrows. Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument marked a milestone in conservation. Proclaimed in 1996 by President Clinton, it was the first national monument managed by the Bureau of Land Management. The BLM is the nation's largest land caretaker. That designation marks its evolution towards conservation. Nearby, Bear Ears National Monument shares many characteristics with Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Its location in southern Utah, its size larger than Grand Canyon National Park, and wondrous redwood country with even more immense vistas. The previous view was from the Needles Overlook in the north of the monument. This is from the Moki Dockway at the south of the monument, looking towards Valley of the Gods. Valley of the Gods is a sandy plain dotted with sandstone buttes and spires reminiscent of Monument Valley, but it lacks the regulation, commercialization, and tour groups often found at Monument Valley. You can come and go as you please and find plenty of places to camp for free. The San Juan River marks the southern boundary of the monument. The goosenecks are meanders carved 1,000 feet deep as the river twists and turns for over 6 miles in the space of just 1.5 miles. Muley Point, the cliff forms the edge of Cedar Mesa. Cedar Mesa is a 400 square mile plateau known for its density of archaeological sites. Bear Ears is primarily a cultural landscape. When it comes to ruins, people think Mesa Verde National Park. But there, off-trail hiking is prohibited, and to visit cliff dwellings, you need to join large ranger-led guided tours. This structure in Bear Ears, called the Throne Roof Ruin, is one of the most iconic in the entire region. Even so, there was no other car at the trailhead, and I hiked in a beautiful canyon without a designated trail. Run Gulch, a 50-mile canyon draining the western half of Cedar Mesa, had the densest population in North America before the arrival of non-native settlers. With no official trails, the wilderness experience in Grand Gulch rivals any other in the Southwest. Hidden in the labyrinths of canyons and mesas of Bear Ears, there are more cliff dwellings and tribal artifacts than any other area in the American West, including Mesa Verde. Those ruins are about 5 miles from the trailhead in Bullet Canyon, a tributary of Grand Gulch. Located beneath a large alcove, aptly named Perfect Kiva, is a well-preserved kiva. The ruins are not fenced in Bear Ears, but there is an etiquette in visiting them. Normally, you have to refrain yourself from entering them. But here, a modern ladder installed by the BLM invites visitors to climb down into the kiva. Due to a cold snap, I endured freezing temperature all day. The surprisingly warm temperatures were such a welcome change. The ancient builders had designed structures with such efficient insulation out of simple materials. Like Grand Staircase Escalante, Bear Ears National Monument was a milestone in conservation. The Hopi, Zuni, Mountain Ute, Zuni, Navajo, and Ute agreed to set differences apart to petition for the protection of their ancestral lands. In response, President Obama proclaimed Bear Ears National Monument in 2016. It was the first national monument initiated by native tribes and co-managed by them. National monuments are much less known and visited than national parks, but those two, Grand Staircase Escalante and Bear Ears, have been in the news since 2017. In the spring of that year, the former president signed an unprecedented executive order to review all the large national monuments created since 1996 with an eye towards development. It targeted a total of 27 national monuments, including 22 national monuments on land, in addition to 5 even larger marine areas. As you can see on the map, they are all in the west, except for one in Maine. The public comment period of the summer of 2017 generated 97% support for the national monuments under review. Yet, on December 4, 2017, the former president ordered size reductions to the 2 national monuments located in Utah. Grand Staircase Escalante was reduced by half. All the geological wonders I've shown you would fall outside of the new boundaries. Bears Ears was even worse. It was shrunk by 85%. Everything I showed you would fall outside the new boundaries. The disrespect toward indigenous people in gutting the monument against their objections was as troubling as the scale of the reduction. In January 2018, I resolved to take action the only way I knew, by hiking and photographing the 22 land-based national monuments in the review. I found a broad cross-section of natural environments covering a significant portion of the American landscape, totaling about 11 million acres. By comparison, the 51 national parks in the continental US total 19 million acres. The national monument in Maine is Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. All the others are in the west. Let's go for a quick tour. The range in the north, as far as northern Montana. Upper Missouri Breaks National Monument protects the last free-flowing section of the Missouri River. I paddled along the river for half a week, following the historic camps of the Lewis and Clark expedition, understood why they call the place the land of enchantment. Hanford Ridge National Monument in Washington protects the last non-tidal free-flowing section of the Columbia River. They range in the south, as far as southern New Mexico. Here is Organ Mountain Desert Peaks National Monument. All the 4 North American deserts are represented. That's the Chihuahuan Desert, the Sonoran Desert, portions included in Ironwood Forest National Monument, and Sonoran Desert National Monument, both in Arizona, are as beautiful and representative as those in Saguaro National Park, if not more pristine. In Gold Butte National Monument in Nevada, the Mojave Desert and its Joshua trees meet the red rocks of the Colorado Plateau. Further north in Nevada, Basin and Range National Monument protects the 2 last remaining undisturbed basins of the Great Basin Desert. By contrast to the desert, the 3rd most biologically diverse conifer forest in the world is in Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, Oregon. Berryessa Snow Mountain in Northern California is equally lush, and you can see one of the most spectacular displays of wildflowers in North America during the super bloom in Carrizo Plain National Monument. Giant Sequoia National Monument protects more sequoia groves than Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks combined. The bull tree was once considered the largest tree in the world because it has the largest diameter of any living giant sequoia. Also, it is only the 6th largest by volume. On visits to the tree on 2 different days, I didn't see anyone on the trail. Around the famous sequoias in the nearby national parks, Railings are necessary to protect the trees. Here they were none, and I squeezed into a burn scar, getting inside the tree. Since unlike in the national parks, drones are allowed in national monuments, with nobody around to disturb, I sent out in the air my drone at sunrise, capturing the tip of the tree hardly visible from the ground. From the point of view of topography, you have high mountains, such as San Gorgonio Mountain, included in Sand to Snow National Monument, so named because of the more than 10,000 feet elevation difference from the desert floor to the summit, and Mount Baldy, the highest peak in San Gabriel Mountains National Monument, both in Southern California. You have plateaus sculpted by volcanic activity, like Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho, and Rio Grande del Norte National Monument in New Mexico, deeply incised by the gorge of the Rio Grande River. You have canyons. The Paria Canyon is more than twice as long and every bit as impressive as Zion National Park's Virgin River Narrows. For the entire day, I saw only a dozen of backpackers. The canyon is in Vermilion Cliff National Monument, Arizona. Even if the name is unfamiliar, you have seen images of the world-renowned rock formations. This one is called the Wave. Although not its main attraction, the monument, like most of the 22 national monuments, has its share of archaeological sites and petroglyphs. This one is called the Maze. I spent months in repeated visits to the 22 national monuments, immersing myself in those sacred lands and discovering remnants of cultures imprinted on the ancient landscape. That's a newspaper rock of Gold Butte National Monument. So many of those monuments were previously unknown to me. That one is Canyon of the Ancient National Monument in Colorado. It has the highest density of archaeological sites. I reasoned that those areas were vulnerable because the general public did not know about them and thus was not moved to defend them. This inspired me to publish a book that could help conservation organizations raise awareness of those lands. The result is the first photography book entirely dedicated to America's national monuments. While it includes only a subset of them, the 22 monuments at risk from the review represent the vast majority of the large park-like monuments. It is also the first book to present all 5 marine national monuments. On the cover, you can see the name of photographer Jan Scheiv. He is the only non-government person to have visited the 3 marine national monuments with lands above the surface. Those are from Rose Atoll. For the 2 marine national monuments entirely underwater are curated images from scientific expeditions. You get a glimpse of all marine national monuments in the book, but they were not meant to be visitor destinations and are mostly inaccessible. On the other hand, the land national monuments features in the book embody the principle that public lands are open to the public. The national parks are created for the benefit and enjoyment of the people. They are generally equipped with an infrastructure of roads, visitor centers, lodges, campgrounds, and trails. While that makes the visit more convenient, it also brings mass tourism. Last year, Arches National Park was frequently full and closed to new entries by 9 a.m. By contrast, when I photographed 3 of the most well-known arches in nearby Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, I had the place to myself. This is Grosvenor Arch, just a short stroll from the parking area. Metate arch doesn't require a much longer walk, but since the arch is smaller, it is easier to miss. The third arch was Sunset Arch that you saw before in areas that lost protections. Grand Canyon National Park sees 5 million visitors per year. By contrast, Grand Canyon Parashan National Monument is a place of solitude. This is Whitmore Canyon Overlook. I didn't see any other party from late afternoon to late morning. Not only it is quiet, but it is also a remarkable place. Unlike other overlooks over the Grand Canyon, it is on a lower rim. The river view is excellent, and you have the easiest access to the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. The trail loses only 900 feet to the river, as opposed to 3,000 feet from the south rim. The catch is that I needed to rent a Jeep. Grand Canyon Parashan National Monument is a place of adventure. Also, its size is comparable to Grand Canyon National Park. There is not a single paved road. As their development is minimal, national monuments can test your preparation and self-sufficiency. During the 3 years of this project, I ended up with 5 flat tires, sometimes in incredibly remote areas. Whitmore Canyon Overlook was on a lower rim. Grand Canyon Parashan National Monument has also mountains. Mount Logan features a high view of the entire Grand Canyon ecosystem without equivalent in the national park. The location is not marked on the map provided by the National Park Service. There was little information on the internet, and it was inconsistent. Some mentioned having to hike for hours to get to the summit, and others less than a mile. With no visitor centers, no rangers around, no brochures, no guidebook, the first obstacle in my explorations was to find information. Our national monuments provide you with a starting point I wish I had for planning trips. With my previous book, Treasured Lands, I'd aimed to both inspire and inform. Our national monuments follow the same format, depicting each national monument in depth through a selection of representative highlights with key map and location information. There is one important improvement, so, except for the foreword, I wrote every word in Treasured Lands. For our national monuments, to amplify the call for conservation, I invited local activists who advocate for these lands and waters to present their perspective. I'm so grateful to 27 local citizen associations for introducing each of their monuments. Many of them are part of the Conservation Lands Foundation Friends Grassroots Network. For example, the Mojave Desert Land Trust wrote the introduction to the chapter about Mojave Trail National Monument. To illustrate the diversity found within one monument, we are going to go through the images of that chapter. Bigelow Cholla Garden Wilderness protects California's densest population of the fluffy cactus. Walking less than half a mile into the wilderness, I found stands more extensive than in Joshua Tree National Park's better-known Cholla Cactus Garden. Only a few miles removed from Interstate 15, Afton Canyon remains hidden and unknown to the millions that speed across the desert. It is a large and deep canyon, sometimes nicknamed the Grand Canyon of the Mojave, with sheer walls more than 200 feet high. For much of its course, the Mojave River runs underground. Afton Canyon is one of the few places where it reliably runs on the surface, a rare sight in the desert. The runoff from the surrounding mountains has cut fascinating narrow secondary canyons that reward off-trail hiking. I found entrances of narrow Salt Canyon, just a few feet wide, several stories tall. Unlike Navajo sandstone canyons of the Colorado Plateau, the walls were not smooth, but instead knobby. At Bonanza Springs, willows and cottonwoods improbably line a small canyon for half a mile, the only water source of its size in more than 1,000 square miles of arid desert. Despite a dozen visits to Death Valley National Park, I could never find the Mesquite sand dunes devoid of numerous footprints from other visitors. At Cadiz Dunes Wilderness, I saw only animal tracks. The monument features an abundance of remnants of a volcanic pass, that's the Pisgah lava flow. The Pisgah flow is home to more than 300 unmarked and undeveloped lava tubes up to 1,300 feet in length, the largest concentration of caves in Southern California. Amboy Crater, one of North America's youngest volcanoes, is an almost perfectly symmetrical cinder cone. It is perhaps the most easily accessed and developed area in the monument. Inside the crater, I found 2 lava dams creating miniature playas with seasonal water. Mojave Trails National Monument includes the longest undeveloped stretch of historic Route 66, more than 100 miles. Here is the entire chapter. The book's layout presents the photos cleanly, but there is also a lot of text. Other coffee table books often left me frustrated of being in the dark about the locations depicted. In our national monuments, like in Treasured Lands, each photograph comes with practical travel notes, observations about natural history, and about my experience. I highlighted 7 locations in the monuments. Each of them is keyed on the map, and there's an optional PDF formatted for mobile devices where maps can be zoomed to full detail. This makes the book not only an invitation, but also a guide to visit the national monuments. In October 2021, President Biden reversed a reduction in size to the national monuments in Utah. Were the presidential action of 2017 just a bad dream? The attack on our national monuments had a few beneficial and intended consequences. It reminded us of the importance of the Antiquities Act. Used by 16 presidents from both parties, its versatility made it a cornerstone of preservation in America. It reminded us of John Muir's appeal that the battle for conservation will go on endlessly, that we can no longer take designation for granted and must remain vigilant and involved. It prompted me to set out to see for myself the magnificent landscapes of those parks less traveled. In this presentation, I've tried to give you a taste of the diversity found in the 22 national monuments. You've seen images of each of them, a few more in depth. Visiting the national monuments was an incredible adventure. They've brought me so much joy. I'd like you to be able to experience for yourself what I experienced. As the national parks become ever more popular, the national monuments offer us places of solitude, inspiration, and adventure. I hope that my photograph will inspire you to learn more about the monuments and visit for yourself. And if the experience has enriched your life, to speak out for them. And I thank you in advance for that.
Thank you, QT. That was really delightful. Thank you for that journey. Ed, I'm sure you have some remarks.
Well, I have the book here and I look at it, I take it with me. It adds to my carry-on weight on airplanes and look at it. I have to say that seeing that presentation was actually new and very special. And it makes me realize how, in many ways, what QT Luong has done and the book, Our National Monuments, another quality of it is it really is timeless. It is a book which will truly never go out of date. While I was listening to this and watching it, I also was looking at a presentation that we had yesterday with the Conservation Lands Foundation to look at the places that should be national monuments that are not. That's volume 2 that I want QT Luong to do for us. And these are places that we have teed up now through our Friends Grassroots Network. They're in virtually every state. There are at least 24 opportunities that we have for new national monuments, totaling probably more than 20 million acres. They range from the Western Arctic, otherwise known as the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska, which is 11 million acres. That is highly threatened by oil and gas development and ConocoPhillips' Big Willow project, and literally opening up that whole area. Places like the Oahe Canyons, the Bodie Hills in California, the Gila Bend, on and on and on. These are iconic American landscapes that we have an opportunity over the course of the next 2 to 3 years to protect, either by a president using the Antiquities Act, as presidents tend to do toward the end of their first term and their second term. And we are pressing the Biden administration hard to do that, or through legislation. And this is we have a window of opportunity over the less than 3 years now to get a number of these places protected. And the only way we're going to get them protected is through the advocacy force of our Friends Grassroots Network, by demonstrating that these places have local support. That's a big part of our job. And then protecting what we've already protected, and making sure that through the hard nitty-gritty work of management plans and local actions, that these places actually are managed for the purposes that they were created and intended to protect. So that's really what the Conservation Lands Foundation does. And that's what we need your support to continue to do. And so for those of you who have been our longstanding and loyal supporters, thank you. We thank you for your support, and please continue, particularly over the course of the next couple of years, to provide your support, because it's going to be really, really critical when we have this opportunity. And also, frankly, to get ready for what may come post-2024. So that's something that's a subject which we are thinking about literally every day. And the more we can get protected now with the right legal protections, the right degree of endurability, if you want to call it that, the better off we're going to be in the event that we would face, as we did in 2016, a very hostile administration. And in fact is, between 2016 and 2024, we fended that off. So it's a very critical time for the Conservation Lands Foundation and for your support. And I hope, QT, that you're going to be able to work with us to produce volume 2 and to help us make people aware of what really is at stake with these 24 plus areas that should be national monuments. And when I look at what you've done with our national monument, American Hidden Gems, I know that there is no person, literally no person, who is better able to help us do that. And we really look forward to working with you on that. So again, I encourage you all to buy QT Luong's book, Our National Monuments, and he'll tell you how to do that. We'll tell you how to do that. and I ask you for your continued generous support. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, we
Jump
have a
in.
minute or so if you want to put a question in the chat. Otherwise, I'll have some final closing remarks and okay, thank you. So from Suzanne, two questions I think for you. I'm going to put to you, QT. One is, what's your favorite national monument? And the second is, have you visited Browns Canyon?
Favorite national monuments, it would be difficult to say under the merits because they are all so diverse and different. But I would say I will try to reply to this question maybe based on my personal relationship with the place. And then that would have to be Grand Staircase Escalante, because that was the first of those national monuments that I visited. And actually, I went there in 1996, shortly after it was designated. So I've visited this national monument more than any other. On the list, also, it's not very close to my place. I live in California, and it is in southern Utah. But it's become a special place for me.
Great, thank you. And then there was a question, have you been to Browns Canyon?
No, I've not yet.
Okay, maybe that will make it on your list.
It is certainly on the list, actually. Yeah, I'm planning independently of the project to photograph potential national monuments to visit all the monuments too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, QT, and thank you, Ed, and for everyone who was able to make time to join us today. And we hope you're as inspired as we are all at CLF by QT's work and his attention on national monuments. We do have a winner to D. Knox. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but you will receive by random selection. It was a random selection. You will receive a signed copy of QT's book. And for anyone interested in purchasing a copy, we at CLF would encourage you to do so directly through QT so that there's not a take, given through Amazon or through another outlet. If you can buy directly from him at ournationalmonuments.com, he'd be happy to send one out to you. And we're delighted that you joined us today. We'll send out a recording of this to everybody who RSVP'd and who's joined. So hopefully you can share the love and share the inspiration. And thank you for your continued support of the Conservation Lands Foundation.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thank you again for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.